So, welcome back to another additional chemistry OMG series. This one we're talking about crude oil. So, first up, how do we make crude oil? Okay, so crude oil is a mixture of hydrocarbons. So it's not a compound, it's a mixture, which means you can easily separate the hydrocarbons. Hydrocarbons means something that's only made from hydrogen and carbon. Okay, so how do we form crude oil? What needs to happen is dead marine plants and animals floating around in the ocean need to die and start to decay. Okay, over time, rock and other things will build up over them. It'll cause intense heat and pressure. So as the rock builds up, it causes intense heat and pressure, and the organisms turn into oil and natural gases. Okay, it takes millions of years, which is the problem as to why we can't just make oil straight away. And then after a while, we have to frack it. Fracking means that we drill down and get the oil out. Okay. So how do we then separate crude oil in a mixture of hydrocarbons? So what you do is fractional distillation separates oil based on its boiling point. So we put the oil in, okay, heat it up, roughly 350 degrees, and as it warms up, it'll turn into a gas. Okay, so it'll evaporate and turn into a gas. Gases are much lighter than liquids, so will start to rise up. Okay, substances with a high boiling point, so substances that are quite high boiling points, will condense, so turn back into a liquid, so from a gas to a liquid, at quite warm temperatures. Okay, the ones with the lower boiling points, often the shorter carbon chains, will float up to the top and then they will condense at the top. Okay, each fraction contains hydrocarbon molecules with a similar number of carbons. Okay, so diesel comes out around there, but there might be other substances there that have got the same number of carbons as diesel, or quite similar carbons to diesel. Okay, the ones at the top then are more flammable, so that's how we can tell them apart. They boil a lot lower temperatures, ignite easily, so we can set fire to them. Okay, the ones on the bottom have got higher boiling points. They're not as volatile, so we can't burn them as easily. Okay, crude oil contain all sorts of stuff, natural gas, coals, anything in it. We've talked about it being so. When crude oil, and we separated it over time, some of the hydrocarbon chains are still too long. They're not as short as diesel or petrol, so we can't actually use them. Okay, but we need to find a use for them, because otherwise supply and demand won't match. We've got a larger supply of the dectane, but more of a demand for shorter hydrocarbons. Okay, they don't flow as easily and they're difficult to ignite. So cracking allows us to make shorter, useful hydrocarbons. You need to remember the conditions. So vaporized, turned into a vapor gas, about 600 or 700 degrees, passed over silica and aluminium catalyst. Okay, what happens is we break the covalent bonds. Again, it's covalent bonds because they're both non-metals. Break them down, okay, and we make a smaller, shorter chain alkane, which can be used as a fuel, and also a shorter chain alkene, which can be used to make plastics. So we have got our importance of crude oil. So what you need to remember about crude oil, okay, is it's a political power for some countries. So smaller countries, more independent countries actually have access to in the Middle East, access to crude oil. Okay, we as a country don't have access to crude oil, so we have to ask for people to give us crude oil. So we have to buy it. So there might be a war or a political crisis in oil producing countries to restrict crude oil supplies. Burning fossil fuel releases carbon dioxide, so can contribute to global warming. Oil spillages, might have seen diagrams of them, have disaster effects on the local environment. And then oil refineries and oil power stations take up a lot of land, so can destroy potential wildlife and habitats. So just as before, there's some core knowledge questions there. Pause the video, have a go at them, and then I'll come back and give you the answers. So, how is crude oil made? Dead marine plants and animals. Intense heat and pressure. Millions of years, so it takes millions of years. What is fractional distillation? Separating crude oil based on boiling points. What is cracking? Longer chain hydrocarbons into shorter, more useful ones. and you end up with an alkane and an alkene. What are the conditions for cracking? You need about 600 degrees, vaporized, and an aluminium silica catalyst. What problems can oil cause for the environment? CO2. So it releases CO2 when burnt. That contributes to global warming. So if you've got all them questions right, you've done the revision on this topic. If you haven't, go back, stop the video again, and have another go at questions.